thought Vance came out very strong. Tim Walz looked like a nervous team in their first Super Bowl for the first quarter, right? The first set of plays, he was very nervous, felt very almost too scripted going into it, and so it definitely was going to take him a little while to settle in. And I think he did settle in, but certainly before that first commercial break, I think Vance was light on his feet. I think he was able to pivot the conversations in the direction that he wanted to go as far as debate performance goes. I think certainly in the first half of the debate, Vance had the advantage. Maybe a little closer in the second half. I felt like Walz started to find his groove, and maybe the topics were a little bit more favorable to what he wanted. But, I mean, if I had to score it, I would have given Vance the bout.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you. I think Vance definitely won at the beginning. It was, frankly, I think it was overwhelming, and Vance was smooth and he knew his stuff. Kristen, let me ask you, what are your thoughts about the debate? Who won this debate, and did you see any shift throughout?
So Walz did look Nixon-y. I mean,
Nixon-y.
He was a little sweaty.
Yeah.
And look, I would be nervous too. But I thought he definitely had some moments where, that Hong Kong answer was just awful for him. And I sympathize with anyone that goes through that. But sometimes they get you, and they got him. And that was very rough, and it was hard for him to recover from that. I thought Vance was masterful. I thought he had empathy. I thought he was kind with a few zingers. I thought it was a great debate to watch because it was actually policy-driven.
Yeah.
I would have loved to hear more economics. But I would say that, I think Vance is a clear winner here.
It's a nice debate to have when nobody's attacking you personally, they're attacking the person you're running with, right? So you get to talk about policy, and then they attack the other guy. It's okay. Dr. Mike O'Neill, let me ask you, who won this debate, and how did it?
You look to see that
I checked the light this time. I did.
I was struck by a couple of things. One is the utter normalcy. The utter normalcy of the debate. Are we on?
Yeah, we're not hearing you that well, though, Mike. I'm not sure what's happening. So let's get that figured out. We'll bring producer Nick in here to find out what's going on, and let's just talk about some of the issues that we were working on here. That they started off with Israel, but I want to start with immigration. This is obviously one of the top issues in the election this year: immigration and the economy. So let me ask you to start. They did talk about the Haitian immigrants in Springfield, and there was definitely a theme, I think, of Vance blaming the immigration, the wide open immigration. It's all Harris's fault, obviously, but it seemed to be that's what we were blaming everything on, right? Housing prices are high because of that. We didn't really hear much about crime today. We didn't hear about that, but everything was because of immigration. Do you think? We got Mike. Kristen, I think
Mike's working now.
All right, let me just ask Kristen this question first, and then I'll come back to you, Mike. Kristen, did the immigration? I mean, yes, immigration has been out of control for 3.5 years. I think we'd all agree on that. We'll talk about more details in a moment. But did Vance overplay that? Did it come across to the average American that everything is the fault of immigration, and he just was going to pivot to it as much as he possibly could throughout the debate?
It didn't seem as aggressive as it would have been had Trump been speaking about it. I mean, he did try to pivot back and say we can't blame them for everything. Clearly, it's top of mind with most Americans. I think even more so than abortion. I think it's economy, immigration, abortion, and then, foreign policy after that.
Yeah.
So I didn't think he was immigration crazy. Like, I don't think he was calling them evil and boiling cats and dogs and, all of that other, hyperbolic.
I guess when you set the bar low, then that seems very positive now. Dr. Mike O'Neill is here with us. Mike,
I can hear myself a little bit. I hope you are.
Who won the debate?
I found it to be a pretty close call. I mean, the first thing that hit me, this was a very normal debate. They were civil. They stayed on largely on topic. Of course, when they got asked a question they didn't want to answer, there was a certain amount of pivoting. Vance, I thought his biggest gain was with you're eating cats and dogs and those kinds of things. He had a little bit of a kind of a bad image going in, but he came across as reasonable. In fact, so reasonable in many places. I think if you go through this, you'll find several where he fundamentally disagreed with Trump policies. Though he didn't draw that out, didn't want to. I mean, the thing about we're committing to spending money on child care, I don't think that's Republican orthodoxy. But, I don't, the big picture thing is I don't see this changing anybody's mind because, first of all, to have any chance of change, and even then I don't think it would, you'd need a massacre. You'd need something similar to the presidential debate. There was nothing. This was in the normal range. The overwhelming majority of people who's watching a vice presidential debate, it's partisans on both sides. And every partisan watching this debate saw plenty to convince them that their side won.
I will say I saw a clip recently. They were playing old debates of presidents and how in the old days, up until 10, 20 years ago, presidents would sometimes agree with each other on the debates. I agree with you, and we heard that today, right, from both of them. They agreed with each other.
We haven't heard that in a while.
No, it was very unique to hear that. So I agree with that, and I guess we talked about this a little before the debate. Does a vice presidential debate ever really move the needle unless somebody just destroys themselves? And I don't know that.
Think of the best line you ever heard in a presidential debate. We all know what it was, right? Senator, I knew Jack Kennedy was a friend of mine.
No.
And you remember the thing that we forget about that guy who delivered that great line, dominated the whole debate by that. They lost.
Yeah, no, that's true. Of course, my other favorite one was in Ronald Reagan. I think it was to Mondale said, "I'm not going to let your inexperience or anything."
I thought that was was that.
I thought it was Reagan said,
but it was a presidential debate, I think. It was absolutely a moment.
Right. No, that's true. All right. So let me ask you some of the other big issues that went on here. I thought that Chris Merrill, I thought Vance did a nice job pivoting it away when the moderators tried to go to him about some of his old statements, right? People were they were like, let's see what they do here. They brought up the thing. He said Trump was America's Hitler and some of the other stuff. I thought he moved away from it, that he learned something about it. He changed his opinion. I thought he did a nice job.
He did. And then he came back to, and I wanted to follow up on something that Kristen said here, too. He tended to come back to the things that he knows is polling very well for his group. He would bring it back to immigration. He would try to draw a through line from immigration to whatever the woes are, because he knows that's where we're really strong. And if we can tie something we're really strong to some of these other areas, and we can bring people over, then that's going to benefit our campaign. And I thought he did a nice job. And to Kristen's point, he didn't sound crazy. It didn't sound like he was on the crazy train. It did seem obvious that he was doing it, but it didn't seem painful.
Yeah.
And I want to say there are a couple of things. You're right. He was masterful in sort of pivoting back. And let's keep in mind, he's got a couple of things in his background that work against him. One, he's an Ohio State grad. Two, he's a legal graduate. And as we know, you can't trust either one of those things.
Take it easy.
But he did a really good job, to your point, of pivoting back. It's not what I wanted. And even after the painful response about China that Walz said, he was like, I misspoke, and what I care about is the community. And then they sort of held him to that and went, but what do you think? And he went, I answered it. I misspoke.
I'm finding it hard-pressed to think of anybody who's going to care about what month in 1989 you were in China, something 35 years ago.
Isn't the point, though, to show that he can't be trusted, or that he'll bend things to whatever is politically expedient? It was an embarrassing moment, but to your point, Doctor, I think you're right. I don't think anybody went, oh, my God, well, that's my vote's out now.
I don't think most people even know what that was about, frankly. But
or could tell you what year, let alone what month Tiananmen was.
But here's the part that gets me is, why didn't he have the answer for that ready to go? You knew that was coming, right? If you're Tim Walz, you know they're going to ask you about China and when you were in China. How does he not have the well-rehearsed, I've said it 45 times, answer, and then just move on?
I felt like he did.
He stumbled.
But it still was awkward.
It was awful.
Yeah.
It was awful.
It just made him look like he didn't know what he was saying, and it wasn't necessarily truthful. It looked awkward.
It just doesn't help with credibility.
I don't know if it matters, but it was interesting. All right, let me ask you this. I thought there was a change later as we started to talk about more of the domestic issues. I thought Walz seemed to kind of get his feet under him a little bit. I'm not normally a big fan of a candidate that says, in Minnesota we do this, and he said that a lot. We had a lot of that. But the thing that struck me was that Walz is somebody who's governed. He's been in Congress. He's been a governor. He's done things. He's worked with people across the aisle. He's got legislation passed. He's got things happening in Minnesota. And Vance, we haven't really talked about this, but Vance, maybe since Obama, is the most inexperienced person running really ever. The guy hasn't really held a job. He's been a senator for a year and a half. He doesn't have any experience, managing people. He hasn't done anything, and he's the vice president to a guy who's 78 years old, doesn't exercise, and eats Big Macs and Diet Cokes all day long. So shouldn't that be something we're a little concerned about? Now, I thought he did a nice job today introducing himself to the country. I thought he comes across as smart and smooth, and he seemed to know these issues. But shouldn't that be something that we're concerned about? Somebody with that little experience?
I don't think the experience bothers most people. I think they're so worried about him being an extension of Donald Trump and carrying out, all of these, not necessarily outrageous, but to a lot of folks, outrageous premises and ideas. And I think he was very calm. And I think he was very empathetic and endearing and funny and cogent. And I think that people that were worried about Donald Trump, it kind of calms him down. It's like the crazy friend of yours that has a really great wife. You know what I'm saying? You're like, oh,
Yeah.
she makes him look great.
All right.
And I think that's
all right,
exactly what he did.
all right.
Mike O'Neill, is that an issue in this campaign that Trump's almost 80? I mean, he seems okay, but he's almost 80, and is that an issue to have a guy who's the vice president who doesn't have really any experience?
It's surprising the extent to which that has not become an issue. I think it's because there's still the memory of the contrast with Joe Biden, who's sort of losing it, was a whole lot more blatant.
Yeah.
I mean, listening to Donald Trump, this is not the Donald Trump of even 4 years ago.
Right.
I mean, he slips a lot, but it's not like he had one visceral 30-second complete meltdown, which is what Joe Biden had. Now, he just seems to have constantly, he's not what he used to be all the time, but there's no one instant that you can pull out a clip and say, see, right.
All right. Well, that's true. All right, we're here for the post-debate coverage. It's KTAR special election coverage. Chris Merrill is here, Kristen Benz, Dr. Mike O'Neill. I'm Barry Markson. We're going to continue with our special post-vice presidential debate coverage. Stay with us on KTAR. We're going to have a news update and then back immediately with more of the big show. It's KTAR.
KTAR-FM, Glendale, Phoenix. KTAR News now.
Good evening. It's 8 o'clock. I'm Brandon King for KTAR News. Here's what you need to know tonight. You heard here on KTAR as Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Ohio Senator J.D. Vance faced off in 2024's first vice presidential debate. The first topic of the night, Israel's response to the missile strike earlier today, with Vance saying, quote,
Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration.
Walz, meanwhile, called Donald Trump's leadership in the Middle East, quote, fickle, end quote, adding the U.S. would continue to protect assets in the Middle East. The downtown Central Station Transit Center is being named after a Phoenix politician who's dedicated his career to supporting public transit.
Greg Stanton Central Station will be a 1 million square foot mixed-use development when it is completed next year. Arizona U.S. Congressman Greg Stanton spoke at today's naming ceremony on how he championed transportation measures during his time on the Phoenix City Council and as Phoenix mayor.
Convincing voters that the most conservative big city in the country to tax themselves to build a mass transit system. T2000 was our first dedicated local funding source for transportation.
Greg Stanton Central Station will be the second tallest building in the state and will provide more than 600 bus and rail trips every day. Heidi Hommel, KTAR News.
We're learning more about the impact of Operation North Star on our area. Last week, we learned the operation targeting 10 cities, including Phoenix, resulted in more than 3,400 arrests. Acting U.S. Marshal Van Bayless says more than 300 of those arrests happened here.
Aside from the arrests, we seized 60 firearms, nearly $100,000, 3 vehicles, and more than 234 kilograms of narcotics.
The operation was conducted over the course of 65 days earlier this year in and around Phoenix. Phoenix has just wrapped up the hottest September on record. Sean Benedict, lead meteorologist with the National Weather Service, saying the average September temperature, when you tally up the highs and lows, was 94.6 degrees, overtaking the old record of 92.2 back in 2001.
We're getting to the time of year where it's very, very difficult to get these temperatures. We're talking records, and whereas maybe a lot of people might be acclimated, there's a lot of people that are already probably starting to come in from outside the region that are not used to this.
Phoenix also saw the hottest June in city history, the second hottest July, and the third hottest August. Change is happening even as the city of Phoenix begins to talk with the Department of Justice about a path forward for the Phoenix Police Department.
The council voted unanimously to set up a hotline for people who have complaints or concerns. The DOJ pushed us to dispatch differently, including using more non-law enforcement on mental health calls.
That's Mayor Kate Gallegos. She tells the Mike Broomhead Show the goal is to avoid a consent decree in federal monitor. It comes weeks after the DOJ detailed what it described as a pattern of civil rights abuses within the Phoenix Police Department. And the holiday season is still a few months away, but you might want to get started on your holiday shopping immediately.
Port workers along the Atlantic and the Gulf Coast are on strike, demanding a 77% pay raise and the removal of automation from the workforce. ABC's Jim Ryan tells Arizona's Morning News our product availability could eventually be affected.
That merchandise, if it came from China or it came from somewhere that normally comes through the East Coast or the Gulf Coast, it's going to be sitting there in ships, just not getting distributed to the homes of consumers.
Ryan says as the holiday season approaches, companies are concerned they won't be able to get products to customers in time. Workers say after the companies made billions during the pandemic, it's time to share the wealth. Shira Tanzer, KTAR News.
We'll now go to a traffic check live from the Valley Chevy Dealers Traffic Center. Looking at a couple crashes in the downtown area. One on the 10 eastbound near the 17 southbound intersection just before the 27th Avenue area, already causing a bit of a delay. Again, heading eastbound into town onto that 17 southbound intersection. Just east of that as well, another crash blocking the 10 eastbound. This one on the right shoulder of 7th Avenue, and further west, a crash on the eastbound as well near North 75th Avenue. That already causing a bit of delay, already backed up towards the 83rd Avenue area, about 2 to 3 blocks in that western direction. Finally, tonight, a crash on the 17 southbound report via this one just south of North Black Canyon Highway, delaying things from that Union Hills Drive area up towards Deer Valley Road. KTAR weather for the Valley. We've had some isolated showers and dust storm conditions in North Phoenix earlier this evening. Winds up to 40 miles per hour, according to the National Weather Service. For now, though, we're looking at those winds starting to temper down in the evening hours. Clear skies and a low of 84 degrees, 104 degrees, the expected high for tomorrow. It's currently 101 degrees in Phoenix. Weather brought to you by Howard Air. Weather replacer repair, call Howard Air. I'm Brandon King for Arizona's news station, KTAR News.
A KTAR News special, post-debate coverage of the CBS vice presidential debate.
All right, welcome back, everybody. It's KTAR special election coverage. I'm Barry Markson. Thanks for being here today. KTAR had the vice presidential debate live, and now we are giving our reaction with our incredible powerhouse panel. We've got Chris Merrill here from the world-famous Chris and Joe show. And, of course, we've thank God Joe's not here, by the way. And, of course, Kristen Bentz is here from KB Advisors. And Dr. Mike O'Neill, KTAR's political analyst. And thank you all for being here. I want to talk a little bit about something that came up more towards the end of the debate. They were talking about the democracy issue and saving democracy. And I want to play a couple of sound clips here. This is Vance. I'm kind of coming in here. I'm trying to cut out the giant minute-and-a-half question that they asked him. But they asked about the state of democracy, and I can't remember which of the two moderators asked the question, but they asked Vance, in essence, would you have, you've said you would not have certified the election in 2020 if you were vice president. If this happened, what would you do coming forward? And Vance, in his answer to this now, Vance seemed to just move into a different direction.
You have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative electors. That has been called unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis.
All right, so I'm not going to play the whole answer there, but Kristen Bentz, you kind of get the flavor of it. He pivoted away.
Yes.
And then we'll play more of this in a moment, but that concerns me because this was obviously a big issue in 2020, and Mike Pence, who was the vice president at the time, he stood up and he did his duty. He said, I can't constitutionally do what Donald Trump is asking me to do. And Vance is saying, I do it. I would have not certified the election, and I'd ask for what they're calling alternate electors here in Arizona. We call them fake electors. Does that something that concerns you at all in somebody who would be the vice president?
So here's the thing. I think that it's a valid point. I think he was clever I would do the same thing. I would bounce away from that and pivot to something else. And I don't think that there was enough focus on economics and inflation. And I think at this point, economically for most Americans, that's not top of mind for them. If you followed January 6th, it was alarming. It was frightening to watch, and I think a lot of people were concerned. I think today, with everything that happened today, for instance, Costco, people are starting to hoard again. They're running out of toilet paper.
We're not telling people that until I get over there to get some paper towels. I need some paper towels.
But you have Israel. You have everything that happened with this hurricane. You have everything that's happening, just with inflation.
You're pivoting just like Vance.
I am. I'm telling you. See that?
Yeah,
See what I
very
just
well
did there?
done.
That just happened.
She did it better, though.
Yeah, she did.
I know. I love it here.
This question, it was a particularly awkward pivot Because the question was about the future. It wasn't about what you did 4 years. The question was, what will you do this time? And he said, well, let's talk about the future. The question was about the future. You pivoted much better than he did.
Well, thank you, sir.
So here's where, and Tim Walz, this is one place where I thought Walz actually kind of came alive and did a better job. He asked the question, and here it is.
Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans?
So he tried to pivot to the censorship thing, and we'll talk about that. Chris Merrill, is this something that's going to resonate with the American people at all, that you have somebody who would be Trump's vice president who is telling us he would not do what Mike Pence did in just certifying the election according to the Constitution, but rather would not do it and would participate in what many people are calling a coup that Trump
I hate to have
do?
to agree with my colleague to my port side here, but I don't think that people it's been litigated enough times in the court of public law. So I don't know how much people really worry too much about what his answer is. But also, let's keep in mind, too, that Vance isn't necessarily trying to win over the American public. He has an audience of one. And if he were to say, I would certify it and Trump was wrong, that's going to get him in trouble with the boss. And I think it's really important for him to kind of stick to his guns. Don't say anything in this debate that Trump can't spin later or that is going to be in a direct contrast to something that Trump says on the campaign trail. So I think he had to be a little bit cautious because, look, that's not the message of our campaign. Our campaign is it was stolen, we were robbed, but now we need to move on. And so I think he wanted to stick with that message.
Dr. Mike, one of the answers that Vance gave, which I always find to be interesting, is that Trump left office on January 20th, so what's the big deal? I've had a lot of people tell me that. And I always kind of look at him and say, so if you have a business and you're an accountant, Kristen, you can appreciate that, and you have an accountant, and you discover that your accountant was trying to embezzle money from you.
And really, you caught them.
And had it all set up, and somebody said, some other employee caught him and said, hey, you can't do this anymore. But so it was not successful. They did not steal any money. Would you bring that accountant back to keep being your accountant? The answer to that, of course, is no, Dr.
Or would
Mike.
you characterize it as, oh, well, we just parted ways, amicably.
Well, but you wouldn't bring them back. You wouldn't hire them to be your accountant again. Why are we doing that again here with Donald Trump? I mean, the evidence, I think, is pretty clear that he tried to stay in office despite losing the election.
That's why the question that was, when it was asked of Vance, was a no-win thing for him. You know, if you there's no good answer that he can give to that. So he tried to parry off of it. As awkward as it was, he didn't have a whole lot of choice because, as Chris pointed out, you can't say, that was wrong. We will abide by the law this time. That's kind of a backslap to Donald Trump. Yep. And you certainly can't say, I'm gonna defy the law and do this thing again. There's no good answer for him.
So let's talk about censorship.
Yeah.
All right. So Chris Merrill from the Chris and Joe show. Let me ask you this. They talked a little bit about Springfield, Ohio, and the Haitian immigrants and the cats and dogs. And this is where the fact check came in. I put my little quote fingers up that in fact those Haitians. It's funny because Dr. Mike O'Neill during the debate said to Tim Walz, you have to say out loud that they're here legally, and Tim Walz didn't do it.
I thought the same thing.
And he was saved by the moderator.
Then the moderators did it, which they weren't supposed to do. So let me ask you: is the Haitian thing where they're saying that the Haitians are here illegally and they're trying to bring it back to illegal immigration? Because as you pointed out earlier, everything goes back to illegal immigration. Is that something that's helping them or hurting them? The Springfield part specifically.
I think we're past it. I think it did some damage short term. But I think there's an awful lot of people that go, well, even if they are here legally and even if they're not eating cats, it is a big problem. And that's really the point that he kept making, too. He said, okay, but look, you've got a huge population of immigrants there, and it is putting a strain on the system, and mothers can't feed their babies, and this is why we have a child care crisis, and this is why we're short on housing.
But isn't that, and this is, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the facts are the part that gets me. What I understand from, and I didn't know anything about Springfield, Ohio until this came up, but from what I'm hearing from the people there is it was kind of a dying town. It was a town that actually had manufacturing and couldn't fill the jobs. They wanted these people there.
Right.
So now, yes, there's issues. There's
but
issues
don't let facts
absorbing.
get in the way of your narrative.
But there's issues absorbing all this. But this is what bothers me a lot. On you can say it's on both sides, but I think it's more of a MAGA issue. I'm gonna call it, where don't let the facts get in the way of a good lie.
That's politics.
Is that just
right?
all
I mean,
the
that's
time?
always been politics.
All right.
And as you said, I had never heard of Springfield, Ohio. Right? None of us have. So what harm does it do if I'm talking to my buddy in a bar in Cheyenne about the crazy things that are going on in Springfield, Ohio? It's not like he's going to fact check me. So this is about the conversation that goes on around the bar stool, around the kitchen table, around the water cooler. And if most of us, 60,000 people around Springfield, Ohio, and 325 million people who aren't.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it resonates with them.
All right.
And the thing about that is, I conspicuously did not see any interview with groups or anyone from Springfield who said, we don't want them here. It was people, as you point out, from other places who were upset about it. And if any place was going to have a negative, the number of immigrants that are in this country, when spread around, is hardly noticeable. But when you see a concentration like that, that's where there could be an issue. But as you point out, a dying town, whatever, that could be viewed quite differently from...
Yeah. There's some difficulty in absorbing it, but also some good that comes from it. All right, we're going to take a short break. We've got Kristen Benz here from KB Advisors. We've got Chris Merrill here from the Chris and Joe Show, 2 to 4 is on KTAR. And, of course, KTAR's political analyst, Dr. Mike O'Neill. When we come back, I haven't told anybody this question. I've been saving it. J.D. Vance, several times bashed economists. I'm going to come back and ask Kristen Benz if she's okay with that when we get back. Stay with us. I'm Barry Marks, and it's KTAR special election coverage.
KTAR News Flash.
It's 8:14. I'm Brandon King for KTAR News. Earlier today, Iran has launched a missile attack on Israel. Israel vowing a strong response. Retired CIA analyst Paul Kinzinger spent much of his time focused on the Middle East, saying he now believes U.S. forces in the region will be limited to stopping helping Israel to take out incoming missiles.
And are probably not in harm's way, in that I doubt very much there would be any U.S. casualties out of this.
Kinzinger says Israel's response will likely be measured unless they suffer heavy casualties, which could bring an air attack on Iran. We're learning more about Operation North Star and its impact on the Phoenix area. The U.S. Marshal Service says more than 300 arrests were made with 60 firearms and more than 230 kilograms of narcotics taken off the streets. The operation was conducted over the course of this year, focused on 10 cities around the country. And it's another heat record broken. We've hit 113 degrees at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport today. The National Weather Service reporting this beats the record high of 107 degrees set in 2020. It's also the first 110-plus degree day in October in the city's history. No sign of slowing down, with an excessive heat warning through 8 p.m. on Friday night. Never more than 15 minutes away from news, traffic, and weather for KTAR News. I'm Brandon King for Arizona's news station.
Here's more of our KTAR News Special on 92.3 and the KTAR News app. Post-debate coverage of the CBS vice presidential debate.
All right, welcome back. You heard it here live on KTAR, the vice presidential debate between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance. We had it here on KTAR, and now it's the post-debate reaction, our coverage. We've got Dr. Mike O'Neill, KTAR's political analyst. Kristen Benz is here from KB Advisory Group, and Chris Merrill from the top-rated Chris and Joe Show, 2 to 4 here on KTAR. So, Chris and I asked, and I kind of made a joke earlier, but one of the things that happened several times in the debate was J.D. Vance. They were talking about inflation and immigration being up, and one of the responses was about that economists say that Trump's plans, the Wharton economists say that Trump's plans are going to raise the deficit by $8.5 trillion and some other things. And every time economists were brought up, J.D. Vance bashed the economists and said, these economists don't know what they're saying and we don't trust them and all that. What do you think about that as an economist?
I am not an economist. I play one on the radio, though, so don't blow my cover tonight. But what I actually do as an analyst, I make fun of them all the time, and I will tell you why. Economists are never forward-looking. They're always backward-looking. So they're always adjusting what numbers came out. They're not going to tell you what's going to happen. They'll tell you what happened later and why. And so I always mock them because of that. And I have very close special friends that are quite admirable and wonderful economists. But that's just one thing they do. And that's exactly how they work. They constantly are backward looking. And so that would be a fun answer that I would say. Also, it's like a little jab at Wharton, too.
Yeah. But do you remember the Harry Truman take on economists?
What's that?
He said, I want you to hire me a one-armed economist. Because all the economists you get, they say, well, on the one hand, and on the other hand.
That's true. All right, Chris Merrill, they talked a little about, J.D. Vance brought it up a couple times, that under Trump, and you hear this, that under Trump, everything was rosy, right? It was springtime in America again. The jobs were up, pay was up. And again, I was a little surprised Tim Walz didn't come back and say that wages are actually up more now under President Biden and Vice President Harris than they were under Trump. That there's more people have more savings now than they did 5 or 6 years ago. People have. I mean, everything's in many ways from the economy. Everything's gotten better, and Tim Walz didn't make those points at all today. Is there anything to be said for facts and where the economy is and how that, whether people believe that or if it's just almost this lore of Trump that everything was so wonderful under Trump and we have to go back?
Well, I got to give Walz credit here because I think if you start arguing some of that minutia and you start trying to change opinions on the minute things, then you start to get bogged down, and it makes you look like you're not the one. Like you're so concerned with a decimal point that you can't see the entire spreadsheet. And so I think there is this. I hear your point. Like let's fact check him on this, is what you're saying.
Well,
but
no, what I'm saying, if he's saying, look, everything was great under Trump, and he's saying it. He's saying
right.
under Trump wages were up, and under Trump this was up, and all Tim Walz had to come back and say is they're up more under Biden. This is up more under Biden. He didn't have to go decimal.
But remember, then you're up
spreadsheet.
against J.D. Vance, who's going to use that as a chance to counterpunch. So by not engaging in that, you're not opening yourself up to that counterpunch. So, and I hear what you're saying, Barry, but I think honestly, I think Walz went into this knowing that Vance is a better debater.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's a Yale law grad up against a Mankato State or a Minnesota State Mankato. There we go.
Volunteer football coach.
Right. I mean, and I think Walz kind of knew that. And I almost want to give him credit for being smart enough to avoid that and not getting bogged down in that minutia. But I did want to bring something else up that I thought of as you were asking the question, and that is that he said, you made mention that the wages are up under Biden-Harris. One thing that Walz also did not do, and probably to his credit because it would have opened himself up again, is that Vance did a really good job of saying, why didn't Harris do this when she was in the position? Why didn't Harris do that? Why didn't Harris do that? As though the vice president has presidential powers. And of course the vice president does it. But, well, if Harris wanted to cut the taxes, why didn't Harris do that?
Yeah.
And to Walz's credit, he didn't say, well, she wasn't the president. And let's face it, JD, we're both arguing for the lamest job in America right now, right? They didn't do that.
No
He
one
didn't do
wants
that.
it.
Harris
Except it has great potential.
There's a lot of potential, right?
Yeah, Harris had almost as much power to do those things as you did, Chris. But
Exactly.
it is a difficult thing. Kristen Benz, let me ask you on the economy. Is it? I had a great question for you. Now I just lost it.
Oh, it'll come back.
But probably not. Is it true that? Certainly things were good under Trump, right? I mean, we did have low unemployment, and we did have higher wages, and the stock market
there was a
up.
COVID thing, but
then COVID went down.
Dead,
but before COVID. But isn't it also true that now, the stock market's higher than it was under Trump ever, even at its best? Isn't it true that the unemployment rate is better under now than it was under Trump? It was good under Trump, but it's just as good now.
Well, you have to look at the granularity and
But my point is,
the composite of those drops.
Is it just that Trump keeps repeating how great he is, and people believe it, that if you say something long enough. I used to do a sports show, and we always said that we were the longest running sports show in Arizona, and people would come up to me and repeat that to me. Now, I didn't even know if that was even true, but I kept saying it, and it's true. So it always strikes me that Trump does a better job about bragging about himself than Biden does. The stock market's at an all-time high. Biden never talks about it. Trump would have a press conference every Friday and say, look at the stock market. Look what I did.
Exactly.
Is that more of what we're dealing with as opposed to the real statistics where the economy is actually pretty good right now?
Well, that's a whole other conversation for a different show that we should have. But it's not that great when you're looking at the jobs numbers. Remember, we lost 800,000 jobs, and the jobs that we do have are, part-time jobs as opposed to white-collar full-time jobs with higher wages. So I could go on and on and on about that, right?
You analysts are never happy.
I know,
it's either we have
I
too
know.
much
It's the economist's
employment and
fault.
it's driving the inflation,
And
or
it's too
inflation's down and everybody's screwed.
But if you want to talk about hyperbole, so, what's that saying? The bigger the lie, the more people believe it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and that's so Trump's lying, and it's a big lie.
I don't think he's lying. I think he is fantastic at.
He's a marketer.
He's a fantastic marketer.
Yeah, he's definitely a marketer. All right, Dr. Michael O'Neill is your KTAR's political analyst. Let me ask you: was there a turning point in this debate? Was there an issue or one of the topics that you thought is going to be the one that drives tomorrow? Is it abortion? Is it immigration? Is it the democracy part? Is it China? What part of this debate would you say was the biggest?
I don't know about China, but the other three, absolutely. I mean, and there's no surprise here. The Democrats want to talk about abortion. The Republicans want to talk about immigration. They can argue a little back and forth on the economy. And by the way, apropos Chris's comments, I kind of agree fundamentally with him. Essentially, when you don't want to, if people are feeling pain, you don't want to tell them that the statistics are good.
Right.
Because you're telling them that their feelings are illegitimate. That's a losing kind of proposition.
You're right. This is enough of the show. Kristen and I will invite you in one day to talk about all this. When we get back, I want to talk about one topic we haven't talked about yet, the big three, abortion. We haven't talked about that yet, and healthcare. We'll bring that up as well. Definitely different signs of this. J.D. Vance's position, at least as expressed today, seemed a little bit different than what we've heard from him in the past. So we're going to talk about that and the difference and how that came across, and also where they seem to have some agreement on guns and school security and school safety and things for our children. So we'll talk about that as well. Kristen Bentz is here on our panel. Dr. Mike O'Neill, KTAR's political analyst. And, of course, from the Chris and Joe Show, Chris Merrill is here with us as well. I'm Barry Markson. It's KTAR special election coverage. We're breaking down the vice presidential debate right here live on KTAR.
Start smart with Arizona's Morning News.
A local effort is underway to save the African elephant. The Phoenix Zoo says they're hosting a Toss the Tusk event. The event happens today from 9 to 1, and you can also turn in other items like animal skulls, pelts, and furs.
Arizona's Morning News, weekday mornings 5 to 8 on Arizona's news station, KTAR News, 92.3 FM, and the KTAR News app.
I'm Wes Hunsaker. I'm an attorney at the law firm of Morse Hall, and I have the distinct honor and privilege of being able to work with Make-A-Wish of Arizona. And today, I have the special opportunity to talk with one of their wish kids, Nicholas.
Hi, my name is Nicholas, and my wish was to meet Pope Francis.
So tell me a little bit about meeting the Pope. What was that like?
He was nice, squishy.
When you went to hug him?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you think your wish affected you and your family?
It helped bring joy and it helped me spiritually. I would ask for all you donors out there if you can donate to Make-A-Wish to help kids get their wishes. I am very thankful.
If you are considering ways to give back, one meaningful option is to include charitable donations in your estate plan. By doing so, you can ensure your legacy continues to bring joy and hope to those in need. For more information on how you can incorporate charitable giving into your estate plan, please visit our website at morristrust.com.
Hey, it's Mike Broomhead. While you're enjoying the evenings out, vacations, when you're out of town for the weekend, burglars are working overtime knowing that no one is home. They have been breaking into houses using Wi-Fi jammers. They bypass alarms and cameras, and that's why I recommend Bulldog security screens. They are all of your windows, all of your doors, custom measured, and they build these security screens that look amazing on the exterior of your home. Now listen, here's the great thing about it. They don't obstruct your views, and they look terrific, but they protect like a fortress. I was at their factory in Tucson, and they challenged me to try to break through these screens. I used a sledgehammer. I broke a baseball bat trying to break in, a 2x4. I even threw a bowling ball and wasn't able to break in. What I'm saying is they protect like a fortress from French doors to windows to your front and back door. Go to BulldogSecurityScreens.com. That's BulldogSecurityScreens.com. Always demand the Bulldog, because Bulldog Security Screens, they're tough.
Hi, this is Amy Batten with Waterstone Mortgage and host of Keeping It Real Estate with Amy B, as heard every Saturday at 5 p.m. on KTAR News 92.3 FM. Interest rates are finally starting to come down, and the new buzzword, refinance. With the right guidance, refinancing is an important money-saving tool, and I would love to help you. Find me online anytime at keepingitrealestatewithamyb.com. Please reach out today for my free and painless consultation, and let's see if a refinance is right for you.
Waterstone Mortgage Corporation, Equal Housing Lender, NMLS number 1864348, NMLS 1897666.
Each week, at least one child dies from heat stroke after being left alone in a car. Often, these incidents are not a matter of neglect, but even the most responsible, loving parents are liable to forget a child in the car due to sleep deprivation, stress, or a change in routine which can lead to fatal results. As temperatures continue to soar, take steps to ensure a child is never forgotten in a hot car. Download the Cars for Kids Safety app today at carsforkids.org/safety app. Remember, that's cars with a K.
Howard Air's fall rebates are back with up to $6,225 off select new high-efficiency train systems. With so many opportunities to save, now is the perfect time to upgrade your heating system. Plus, make no payments and pay no interest for 1 year on approved credit. Hurry, this offer ends October 30th. Call 602-953-2766 or schedule your appointment online today at howardair.com. Some restrictions apply.
Did you know your skin is the largest organ of your body? Huh? That's why you should shower with Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash instead of plain old bar soap. Love your skin by super hydrating it with vitamin B3 and glorious notes of vanilla and shea. Did you know that my super hydrated skin is the second largest organ of my body? The first is my heart. Old Spice. Men have skin too. Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash. 24/7 renewing moisture. With daily use.
Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts for the power, performance, and reliability of a new Super Start battery. Visit O'ReillyAuto.com.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Time is of the essence with COVID-19. Prescription oral treatment must be taken within the first 5 days of symptoms. If you have a high risk factor, ask your doctor if treatment is right for you. Learn more at treatcovid19.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
To the big-hearted, the bold, the teachers, the growers, the builders, the change makers. We need you. We are the Peace Corps. In more than 60 countries, we go the distance to make a difference. We're volunteers, partners, communities, bringing our experience, joy, and passion to building a better world together. Are you looking for more? Then we are looking for you. Join us at peacecorps.gov.
KTAR News now.
At 8:29, I'm Brandon King for KTAR News. Here's what you need to know tonight. The first vice presidential debate of the 2024 election season, bringing J.D. Vance and Tim Walz on stage to appeal to voters. Vance saying the Middle East was more stable under Donald Trump's presidency, Walz firing back against that.
Look, our allies understand that Donald Trump is fickle. He will go to whoever has the most flattery or where it makes sense to him.
Walz reiterating Israel's right to defend itself and the U.S.'s commitment to protecting assets in the region. Arizona votes. With tonight's VP debate wrapped up, we're hearing from local voters who attended a nonpartisan watch party by Arizona Talks. Independent voter Jamie Cronick says, as a veteran, he's glad the candidates' military histories didn't come up.
Scandal behind some of them based on their service record, and I'm glad that that wasn't a part of the conversation tonight, that they were able to stick to the moderator's questions.
He also says the fact that both candidates were friendly to each other and agreed on some points is something he wants to see more of. It's not funny, so says Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell on the recent wave of school threats across the valley and across the country. She tells the Mike Broomhead Show a number of threats were meant as jokes or carried out as dares.
Even a joke leads to a full-out law enforcement response. It does cause fear in other students and teachers, so it does have an impact. Just because it's a joke doesn't mean it doesn't.
Mitchell says her office will also ask if a parent had any warning of what might happen, potentially making them liable as well. And eyes on immigration, the Biden administration issues tougher asylum restrictions requiring daily illegal border crossings to drop below 1,500 in order to be able to grant asylum requests. Arizona Democratic U.S. Congressman Greg Stanton says the tighter restrictions are safer for border officials and asylum seekers.
If you do it in a way in which it creates more disorder at our southern border, you are not going to be allowed inside the United States.
In the meantime, Republican U.S. Congressman Juan Scamani saying traffic has shifted to new pathways created by the administration, like the expansion of parole and the use of the CBP One app. Onto a traffic check live from the Valley Chevy Dealers Traffic Center. Downtown, still seeing a couple crashes on the 10 eastbound, one on the left shoulder near the 17 southbound, another further west toward North 75th Avenue on the right lane. Both of those blocking things for about 2 to 3 blocks in their respective directions. We're also seeing a crash just north of Tempe. This one on the 202 loop eastbound at the intersection near 52nd Street. That one delaying things for just about a block in that westbound direction. Something to keep in mind if you're north of Sky Harbor Airport tonight. KTAR weather for the valley. High of 108 degrees expected tomorrow, 109 on Thursday, a low of 84 tonight. It's currently 101 degrees in Sun City. Weather brought to you by Howard Air. Weather replacer repair, call Howard Air. I'm Brandon King for Arizona's news station, KTAR News.
Back to our KTAR News Special on 92.3 and the KTAR News app. Post-debate coverage of the CBS Vice Presidential Debate.
All right, welcome back. I'm Barry Marks, and thanks for joining us here. It's KTAR special election coverage. It's the vice presidential debate. You heard it here live on KTAR, and now our special reaction afterwards. Our panel, Chris Merrill is here from the Chris and Joe Show. Kristen Bentz is here from KB Advisory Group, and Dr. Mike O'Neill, KTAR's political analyst. And thank you all for being here today. One of the big topics that was discussed was abortion. And I will say, J.D. Vance's his discussion of this was a little different than maybe we've heard in the past. Here he is. He's asked about the Ohio abortion referendum.
In the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust.
All right, I'm not sure what winning back the trust means, but why that would matter. But it's an issue that Republicans and Donald Trump, to his credit, figured this out a long time ago. He put the 3 judges on the Supreme Court. He knew what was going to happen, but he actually said ahead of time, when this happens, this is not going to be a good thing for us because it's going to be a divisive issue. It's turned out to be a very bad issue for Republicans. But I want to ask, let's start with Chris Merrill here, but I wanted to ask you, I thought that what Walz said here, he said that this is not an issue. It's a family issue. What they want to do, what Vice President Harris wants to do, what he wants to do, is leave the job of health care, leave the decisions to the woman. Let the woman decide how she's going to handle herself. I thought that came across well. What did you think as far as an issue goes?
Yeah. So Walz did a nice job in a couple of places, and I'll tell you that in a second. But what a weird brag, though, to say, look, my home state, Ohio, we voted for it against what I wanted. Wait a minute.
That's a Jedi mind trick.
It really is. It's so like, you should do like we did, not like what I want. What? It made no sense. But here's where Walz scored some big points on that one. He personalized those stories. Yes. He used the person's name, saying, this person in Texas nearly died because the doctor was afraid to do something. Yeah. This person in Georgia did die because they had to go somewhere else.
The 12-year-old in Kentucky who was impregnated by her stepfather who raped her. Yeah.
And so I thought he did a really good job of illustrating the point through effective storytelling, and he connected to people on a very personal level. Mm-hmm. That's where he really... I would say that was probably his strongest, that and then the election integrity thing, probably his strongest two topics tonight.
Abortion lends itself to that. Because they're to personal stories.
Sure, of course.
Because there are real-life examples. It's not theoretical. And you feel like a monster to argue against the tragedy involved.
My eyes roll over when I hear all of those into my head. And I'm a female, so I can talk about this. But a lot of his examples weren't exactly true. She did die because she took the abortion pill and tried to abort her twins and then started bleeding out, waited too long to get to the hospital, and then they didn't do a D&C on her, and that's how she passed away. So, moderately fact-checking. Yes. Do you try to make it emotional? Absolutely. Can that connect with people? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But I think politicians often turn to that so many times.
But let me ask you a question, Kristen, because you're a woman, as you pointed out, so you can talk about these things. One of the points that Governor Walz said is that Democrats want to put women in charge of their own health care. And I wrote down after that, does anyone disagree with that? And let me put that to you.
Exactly. I think that's a fantastic aphorism to throw out there. And I think that's in a nutshell when you're breaking it down. And because abortion is so charged politically, Republicans have to have a better way to talk about it. And I think that J.D. Vance tonight artfully handled that with hey, people didn't agree with me, and you might not either. And so this is how we're going to address that. And yes, it should be with the states and everything that we've heard before. So
I think his self-reflection was pretty good too. As you said, we need to do a better job of our messaging. And I thought that was a kind of an honest moment, right? An honest evaluation of his own party and his own position.
And I think both of them did that in a unique, very positive way throughout this debate that I don't think people were looking for. I think they were looking for them to really slug it out and sling the mud, and they didn't. And I think with a difficult topic like that, I thought it was handled very well.
Vance did that on several occasions, and it was always very disarming. When you do that, you get a lot of credit.
So is that a new way we're going to see Republicans try to talk about the abortion issue, which has been kind of eating them up when they're asked these questions? Because I do agree that Vance did a nice job discussing it. He discussed IVF. He discussed that everybody's kind of for it, even though Republicans have actually voted against it in the Senate for we can talk about the political reasons behind that. But it's interesting to me that Vance, and we're seeing this a little bit here with Kari Lake in Arizona, Vance is really trying to distract or move away from his past positions, which were very anti-abortion. I mean, he wanted to ban abortion. He wants there to be no abortion. He didn't say that today. He moved in. He talked about families, and he talked about we should do more to support families. And that, do women hear that and say, well, he's okay now, even though his history is being wanting to ban abortion?
The Republicans have a real problem with this area because they have the religious right who are adamantly, totally, absolutely opposed to abortion, and they signed on with Donald Trump for a specific reason. And he recognizes that the center of gravity is in the other side, but he is still very, very dependent on this group. And so there's no clean answer for them other than to finesse, change the subject, talk about, he's tried to do it by, states will decide, which was not his position 4 years ago.
He did it well. Let me transition just a little bit to just Obamacare, more healthcare talk. But we talked about Obamacare more than we have in a little while here. And I wanted to ask you, Chris Merrill, do you remember this? It seemed to me like Vance is in this other alternative universe. Suddenly Obamacare was awful under Obama, but as soon as Trump came into office, he saved it and made it fantastic.
Yeah, it's funny you said that because I did make on my notes here. Trump saved Obamacare.
Yeah. And when did I miss that in the 2018? When did he save Obamacare? He was the guy. And I will say this: I thought Walz did a nice job here. Walz points out that not only did he not save Obamacare, he came in and immediately did an executive order trying to get rid of Obamacare, which failed. He joined a lawsuit to get rid of Obamacare, which was shut down by the courts, and then he supported Republicans having a vote in the Congress to get rid of Obamacare, which you remember that was the famous John McCain thumbs down on the floor of the Senate. So when did Trump save it? I missed something.
Well, he obviously didn't. But there was a very subtle moment too, and back to something else we talked about, and that is getting sort of bogged down in debate minutia. And Vance almost did it, and then he sort of backed off. Because Walz was talking about we have to have everybody participating in the market. We have to increase the size of the pool in order for it to function. And Vance said, so you support the individual mandate. And I thought, we're about, and Walz kind of said, well, we have to support in order to expand the pool. And Vance let it go. I thought maybe Vance was going to start getting into the minutia of it. But I think he did a really good job by saying, I'm not going to get dragged into that battle because I don't want to look like a guy who doesn't want to see grandma have health care.
It's
right?
It's a tricky thing because for the policy wonks to understand how health care works, it is the mandate that makes it work.
Right.
Basically, if you let all the young, healthy people out of the system, then the costs become astronomical.
Right.
And that's the only thing that makes the system work. But this country doesn't like anybody to be mandated to do anything.
Right.
Even though they want the outcome.
Don't
they
take
want
away my Medicare.
cheap health care for everybody, right? But where does that come from? Well, you need, in order to have affordable health care, you need a lot of healthy people as part of the system, paying premiums, knowing that someday they're going to get old and have their problems too.
Yeah.
It's
like
a lot of things.
Scheme.
It's an insurance policy, you know. And I pay my full home insurance even in years when my home does not burn down.
Right.
That's very nice of you. I ask for refunds at the end of the year. Kristen Bentz is here. Let me ask you this on the health care issue. Is this something that's good for Republicans after the presidential debate when they asked Trump, what is your health care plan? What is it? And he said, I have concepts. Is it good for us to be talking about this right now when we had 4 years in the presidency where it seemed like every 2 weeks he was promising us the health care plan was coming out in 2 weeks. It never came. Mm-hmm. It's been another 4 years. He still doesn't have one. He has concepts. Is this a good thing for the Republicans to talk about?
I think it's a good thing when they are very clear in what they're conveying. And I think right now that is a loss leader for them. So if it were me, I wouldn't, not that I wouldn't address it, but I think they're bigger fish to fry. And I think they really want to push the economy. They really want to push immigration. Healthcare right now is kind of a meh. I mean, we need it. We'll talk about it. We'll get to it.
Certainly tastier fish for the Republican
Absolutely,
argument. Yeah.
absolutely. So if it were me, I would not be focusing and spending all of my time, especially with swing states. Like, who cares?
All right. On the other side, we're going to talk a little bit more about the debate. We'll talk about who had a good debate, who didn't have a good debate, where were the points that will be talked about tomorrow, and some of the fact-checking that wasn't done. We had one fact-check that wasn't done, and were there other things that were missed? Chris Merrill is here. Kristen Bentz is here, and, of course, Dr. Mike O'Neill. I'm Barry Markson. It's KTAR's reaction to the vice presidential debate on special election coverage. Stay with us.
Hey, it's Mike Broomhead, and if I'm ever hurt in an accident, I'm calling Sweet James. That's right. I already know that's the team I want on my side, and so should you. Because the attorneys at Sweet James don't just win, they win the most. For example, one of our listeners was injured after being rear-ended at a red light. The insurance companies offered them $60,000. Now, that might seem like a lot of money, but with Sweet James protecting them, they were awarded $745,000 instead. They can't guarantee the outcome of a case, but whether it's a car crash, motorcycle accident, or trucking accident, the attorneys at Sweet James are unstoppable in their pursuit of justice, and you pay nothing until they win your case. So if you or a loved one is hurt in an accident, call Sweet James, 800-9-MILLION, for a free consultation. An easy number to remember during an uneasy time. Don't wait, because waiting can hurt your case. 800-9-MILLION. That's the firm that wins the most. Sweet James. 800-9-MILLION or at sweetjames.com. Once again, that's sweetjames.com. Proud partner of your Phoenix Suns.
You love the fall in Phoenix, but you hate to paint, so do what your neighbor Michael did. He called Rhino Shield.
Our home is basically a contemporary with stucco finish, and we just started noticing that the paint was just fading and the stucco would just look like garbage. We had received a postcard from Rhino Shield, and we decided to take a look at it.
Rhino Shield's formulated for our specific climate.
The process with Rhino Shield and their crew, they were just very conscientious. We had problems in the past with painters. They leave debris and everything. Well, we didn't have that with Rhino Shield.
Way better than paint. Backed by a 25-year warranty. Right now, you can get the guaranteed protection of Rhino Shield for 20% off the regular price.
The thing about Rhino Shield, the heat gain has been reduced, and we save $70 a month. You don't hear that about any type of paint.
Rhino Shield owner Jim Williams.
This offer is limited, so call me at 855-4U-RHINO. That's 855-4, the letter U, Rhino.
Go Rhino!
Never paint your house again. Rhino Shield.
It's Gatos. Are you considering GLP-1 medications like semaglutide for weight loss? If so, there's something you should know. In FDA trials, patients lost 13% of their body weight, but it took them 16 months with medication alone. Now, what if you could speed things up? Introducing the GLP Elite program from Red Mountain Weight Loss. They help speed your progress with a personalized meal plan and solutions to reduce side effects. For just $99 plus the cost of your meds, you could lose up to 15 pounds every month. And they're experts, the clinical team. They track your progress every step of the way. For over 30 years, Red Mountain has been the trusted leader in medical weight loss, offering quality medications tested in an FDA-approved lab so you can trust what's inside. Don't wait 16 months. Supercharge your weight loss for just $99 a month with GLP Elite exclusively at Red Mountain Weight Loss. Go to redmountainweightloss.com. Tell them Gato sent you.
You don't have to keep living with that joint pain. Real lasting relief is possible with help from QC Kinetics. People here are getting their lives back, getting their mobility back, thanks to QC Kinetics. QC Kinetics is the nation's leader in cellular therapies that can revitalize your joints using your own body's healing properties, highly concentrated and carefully placed in your achy joints. Back pain, shoulder pain, knee pain, these are cutting-edge treatments that require no surgery, no drugs, and no downtime. These protocols have been developed by medical professionals under the leadership of Dr. Mitchell Scheinkup, a former orthopedic surgeon and a pioneer in clinical regenerative medicine. Does joint pain in your knees, hips, or back keep you from doing the things you love? You owe it to yourself to learn more. Call QC Kinetics now with clinics in Phoenix, Scottsdale, Peoria, and Chandler. 602-837-PAIN. 602-837-PAIN. That's 602-837-PAIN.
Here's more of our KTAR News Special on 92.3 and the KTAR News app. Post-debate coverage of the CBS vice presidential debate.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm Barry Markson here with you in our post-debate coverage. It's the vice presidential debate. You heard it here live on KTAR. And now our post-debate panel, the powerhouse panel, we call that. Chris Merrill is here from the Chris and Joe Show. You can hear Chris with, of course, Joe Izinga, 2 to 4, right here every day, right here on KTAR. Kristen Bentz is, I don't want to keep calling you Kirsten. I keep wanting to do that, which is the
I'll
oddest
answer
thing.
anything.
No.
Chrissy, Kirsten.
Kristen Bentz is with us from KB Advisory Group. You hear her here on KTAR as well. And Dr. Mike O'Neill, KTAR's political analyst, who for some reason I told would stay an extra 30 minutes late and do his show after this. So we're gonna take care of that right after the program today.
Save your best stuff for that, will
Of
you?
course, Mike. So we talked about this a little bit, but let's what are we going to be talking about tomorrow? And we during the break we said we're going to be talking about Israel. We're going to be talking about this strike at the ports. But from the debate, what were the points from the debate that you think are going to be the ones that we talk about tomorrow? I'm gonna lead off. But I will say one is I think we're going to be talking about the abortion issue a little bit, and J.D. Vance saying he never backed a national abortion ban. I think he did, so I think that's going to be called out a little bit. And I think there'll be a little bit more from that as well. Chris Merrill.
Yeah, well, nobody's made this point yet, so I'm happy to be the first to break ground on this. I think that J.D. Vance improved his likability personally here, and I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to be the first person to make that point, because none of you had even thought about that.
I said that during the break, but go ahead and take it for yourself. That's right. I'm a giver like that, but go ahead.
He was upside down on the likability scale. He came across as very normal, very polished, very intelligent, likable, not the kind of person that we've seen in some other televised interviews, not the kind of person that he's been painted in different memes as well. So I think that's one if we're going to talk about the debate itself. Beyond that, I was surprised. They did open the debate with the conversation a little bit about a preemptive strike against Iran. And first of all, I thought the question was not great.
Can I ask you this? How do you do a preemptive strike? They've just shot 200 missiles at Israel.
Would you support the United States making a preemptive strike against Iran?
Yes.
Right,
See, it was even posed weird.
I don't get
it. It was posed weird.
The order of questioning was weird. It was all weird.
I think we're talking about Iran-Israel tomorrow. I think we're talking about the economy, to Kristen's point, and the
ports crisis.
Ports crisis. Yeah, absolutely.
Which could have an impact on prices, supplies, and it'll hit approximately on Election Day.
And let's remember, too, if there's no toilet paper because we got ports that are closed, I can't order my bidet from Germany either.
Oh, my goodness.
It's a real problem all the way around.
Right? Kristen Benz, from the debate, what are we talking about tomorrow? What's
from
the
the
big
debate?
point? Yeah.
I think the Hong Kong thing with Walz was just detrimental to him. I think he looked unprepared. I think he looked sweaty. And I think that J.D. Vance was masterful and in a very empathetic, strong, kind, smart, clever way. And I think that his likability just went up. His stocks just went up.
All right. I think his wife's got a little something to worry about here with Kristen Benz. She seems to like him a lot now. All right. Dr. Mike O'Neill, what do you think? What's the takeaway?
I don't think we're going to be talking much about this. If you want to find something,
Like that's the big thing. It's the post-debate show.
No, I will answer that. I think the answer on Vance and not willing to take a position on who won the last election and what would you do if the same circumstance will be among several things that will be discussed because it's a core question. Do you basically, who won the last election? And if the same thing happens again, are you going to do what Mike Pence did or not?
All right. The one other thing I will mention, and we were looking up before at the screens. We've got all the news stations on in here, the cable news stations, and how differently they covered the debate. And I think what you're going to see on maybe not Fox, but on some of the others that are more on the Democratic side of things, is Vance refusing to say whether off a lot of people's radar, but I do think we're going to be seeing more about that.
It's got
as
the
well.
votes it's going to get. I think why we're not talking about it. It doesn't play with the handful of undecided or persuadables.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. All right, let me ask you this. Kristen Benz is here. Let's talk about the economy, whether it be from this debate. Let's take the debate for a second. We talked about as you're calling it, the port crisis, which I guess that's going to be our new thing. Did that strike? They're on strike now. Is it done?
Yes, midnight last night.
And is there any chance this is going to get resolved in the next few days? Because what I saw is they hadn't even talked since June, right?
No, there's no
been
incentive.
nothing. So is this going to continue all the way through the election?
I hope not. If it does, we're going to be in a serious election crisis about how they handle it. So I think we've got about 2 weeks before things go really south. I'm not seeing any incentive right now for anyone to come to the table.
And am I correct? These port folks, the people who work with this union, and this is a powerful union, they make a ton of money, right? I mean, these are people who have major six-figure salaries already working.
No.
Oh.
Their representative does. He's a fabulous yacht.
I know that on the West Coast, they're making six figures. On the East Coast.
On the East Coast and the Gulf, they make $69 an hour.
Oh.
So let's not go crazy.
Well, $69 an hour is about $138,000 a year without overtime. That's not a bad.
They're like breaking their back and on a forklift. So let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater.
There's a lot of folks working over at Amazon breaking their back and on a forklift, and they're not.
But they're automated.
They're automated.
To your point, though, I do think this is going to be something that the incentive is for Biden-Harris to try to foster some sort of a deal, because if they don't, and we start feeling it in our pocketbooks, if we start running out of toilet paper and we start panicking, then all of a sudden we're going to go, this falls on the current administration. And this is
I think decided.
I think it's the economy, and I think it's immigration.
Okay. And Dr. Mike, what do you think?
I think it's the economy, and I think it's immigration.
Okay. And Dr. Mike, what do you think?
Well, abortion is certainly among them. And, of course, what we're talking about here is who's going to win. If Kristen is right, then Donald Trump carries the state. If it's abortion, then Harris wins. I mean, that we all know that. It's what issue are you thinking about? We know for each of these issues where there's a few more people than not.
Yeah.
You know, where the pluralities are. And we are, Arizona is on the razor's edge.
Chris Merrill, let me ask you this. Walls said it at some point today, and it just kind of gets thrown by the wayside. Biden finally did something on the border, right? It happened just a couple of months ago. And for whatever he did, the number of people crossing the border, whether illegally or through asylum, went way down. I don't know if he's passing out Disneyland tickets in Mexico. I don't know what's happening, but something changed.
Yeah.
Is that going to get any traction with the people in Arizona or the United States?
No, what it
before
has
this
the
election?
effect is it tamps down the enthusiasm around the immigration debate. I don't think it buys Biden any credibility when it comes to immigration, or Harris by proxy. But I do think that all of a sudden it can sort of, instead of being the number one issue, maybe it falls to being number three behind us. I always think economy is number one. James Carville said it's economy stupid, right?
Exactly.
I always think economy is number one. But maybe instead of being a 1B, it falls to being a 3 behind abortion, whatever else it is. If all of a sudden the temperature comes down a little bit, it's not going to buy them any credibility, but it may help to elevate some of those issues where they have more credibility into the forefront.
Is there, last question for everybody, is this debate going to change the polls in any way? Kristen?
I have to tell you, I think
100% agree. Yeah, nobody. I mean, there were no fireworks. So
All right.
with no fireworks, there's no celebration. No celebration means we're not moving any needles. That's it.
No celebration, no needles.
No needles.
All right.
Nope.
Well, thank you all for being here. Very great to have Chris Merrill, Kristen Bentz, and Dr. Mike O'Neill with us here. It's KTAR special election coverage, the vice presidential debate. Thanks to everybody who ran the big program today. Nick Sadowski back there was our producer. He really did a great job. I'm Barry Markson. Thanks for being here. Tomorrow morning, Arizona's Morning News is with you at 5 o'clock. They'll have continued updates from the debate and all the big news around the country. Stay with us, everybody. I'm Barry Markson. It's KTAR.
Dan owed an unbelievable amount of money to the IRS.
I got behind on my taxes. It's a horrible feeling.
He was in denial.
And when I got those letters from the IRS, you wanted to act like they didn't exist.
Finally, Dan turned to Optima Tax Relief, the leading tax resolution firm. A-plus rated by the Better Business Bureau, they've resolved over $1 billion for their clients.
Optima got me a settlement with the IRS. These people are really people-friendly. It was every bit of a new lease on life for me.
The fast action and the great results made Dan's head spin.
I felt like I was in a dream, but it's real, and I have paperwork to prove it. They got the job done, and life is good.
For tax help you can trust, call Optima now for a free consultation.
If you're worried about what's going to happen with the IRS, stop worrying. Make the call now.
Call 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460.
Optima Tax Relief.
Testimonial from an actual client. Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
My friend Wayne, transmissions and a whole lot more.
If you've been listening along, chances are you're familiar with R&K Building Supplies, the Valley's trusted source for building materials for half a century. What you may not know is R&K became part of USLBM, the fastest growing building supply company in the U.S. back in 2018. Over the last couple of years, USLBM has added more companies here in Arizona, including Crown Components, Foxworth Galbraith, Holderness Supplies, and Truss Fab. This year, all these companies have come together under one banner and are now Arizona Building Supply. True to its name, Arizona Building Supply is your go-to supplier for construction materials, serving the entire valley and beyond. With 8 truss manufacturing facilities statewide, multiple lumber yards, and the largest window and door showroom in the valley, they've got everything you need. If you've been a customer of any of these brands, rest assured you'll still receive the same personalized service. Learn more on their website at ArizonaBuildingSupply.com. That's ArizonaBuildingSupply.com.
Still putting off your estate plan? For many people in hospice care, one of their biggest regrets is leaving behind a legal mess for the people they love. Whether you pass unexpectedly or spend your final moments in hospice, do you want your loved ones dealing with a complicated estate settlement that costs time and money in probate court and potentially wipes out their inheritance? You can put those worries aside because RJP Estate Planning can help you create a living trust, ensuring your assets bypass probate and are smoothly passed to your loved ones. And if you're 55 or older, you can save 55% on a living trust. Since 1995, RJP Estate Planning has helped over 40,000 Arizona families. Protect yourself and the people you care about before it's too late.
Take advantage of your 55%